Welcome to our 11th explainer. We're going to kick things off today with a question that, let's be honest, every single one of us has probably asked at some point. Why do we suffer? And is there any way to truly be free from it? It's a huge question, I know. But today, we're going to explore a systematic, ancient answer from one of India's oldest philosophical systems, Samkhya. We'll dive into its foundational concept of Dukkha Traya, the threefold sufferings. And trust me, this isn't just some dusty old theory. It's a practical, logical guide for tackling a universal human experience.
So let's get right to the heart of it. The question that drives this entire philosophy is this: is there a permanent, absolute end to suffering? Now, you have to realize how radical of a starting point this is. Most philosophical systems, they start with big, abstract questions about God, or how the universe was made, or what's right and wrong. Samkhya does something totally different. It begins right here, with the most practical and personal problem you can imagine, the undeniable fact that life involves pain, and our deep, deep desire to be completely free from it, for good.
So, here's our roadmap for the next few minutes. Think of it like a diagnostic journey. We're going to start with the symptom, pain itself. Then we'll look at why the usual cures, both worldly and even religious ones, just don't cut it in the long run. From there, we'll unpack the Samkhya map of reality to find the real source of the problem. After that, we'll check out the specific tools we need to investigate this properly and see how they help us understand things we can't even see. And finally, we'll pull it all together and see how this forms a complete path to liberation, all in miniature. So, let's start at the beginning, the pain.
All right, so first up, we're getting right to the core of it. The very first verse of the Samkhya Darshan lays out the fundamental reason for this whole philosophical quest. It's the raw, unavoidable experience of suffering that makes us search for answers in the first place. The argument is that this search isn't just some intellectual hobby, it's a profound human necessity.
Okay, so here's the verse in the original Sanskrit. I'm going to recite these verses because the sound, the rhythm itself, has been crafted over centuries to carry the precision of the argument. Just listen to the flow. Dukkha Traya abhigata jignasa tadabhigata ke heto drishte sa partha chena ekanta tyantato bhavat. Now, let's break down what that incredibly powerful statement actually means.
The English translation here really unpacks a brilliant line of reasoning. The verse says that being hit by these three kinds of suffering, and we'll get to what those are, naturally makes us look for a way out. But here's the genius part: it immediately anticipates the modern objection, right? Why bother with all this philosophy? We have doctors, we have medicine, money, entertainment, we have practical solutions. The verse's answer to that is what the entire Samkhya system is built on.
And here's that answer, broken down. Our everyday fixes fail because they are neither aikanta, which means they aren't certain or guaranteed to work, nor are they atyanta, which means final or permanent. Just think about it. Medicine isn't always certain. It might not cure you, so it's not aikanta. And even if it does, it doesn't stop you from ever getting sick again, so it's not atyanta. Wealth, it can vanish in a heartbeat, and it for sure doesn't stop heartache. Because every single one of our worldly solutions fails this two-part test, a deeper inquiry isn't just interesting, it's necessary. This is why Samkhya begins right where life hurts.
Okay, so if worldly things like medicine and money don't provide a permanent fix, what about the next level up? What about religious or scriptural remedies? The promises we find in sacred traditions. The very next verse takes this argument one step further, and it applies the exact same rigorous logic.
The second karika builds directly on the first, extending the critique. In Sanskrit, it sounds like this: Drushtavad anushravikaha sahaya vishuddhi kshayatishaya yuktaha tad viparitaha shreyan vyakta vyakta jnana vijyanat. So what does this add to the argument? Well, it's a really critical step.
Now, this translation reveals a huge turn in the argument. The verse says that scriptural remedies, like performing rituals to get into heaven, are ultimately just like worldly ones. They're flawed in the same basic ways. And then it points to a better path. And here's the fascinating part. The solution isn't another action. It's not another ritual to do. It's vijnana, discriminative knowledge. This is a game changer. The path isn't about doing something to fix suffering, it's about knowing something to transcend it completely.
And this slide really nails the three specific flaws Samkhya points out. First, you've got avishuddhi, or impurity. Some ancient rituals, for instance, involved animal sacrifice, which causes harm. Second, there's kshaya, or decay. Any reward you get from a ritual, like a trip to a heavenly realm, isn't eternal. It's temporary. It will eventually run out. And third, there's atisaya, or gradation. The results aren't even equal for everyone.
you might get a better or worse outcome than the next person. So the conclusion is crystal clear. Even sacred rituals fail the test. They aren't the certain and final solution we're looking for.
So if we've established that knowledge is the only real fix, then the next logical question is, what exactly do we need to know? This next section gives us the system's foundational map of reality. You need this map if you're going to navigate your way to the cure. It's a theory of what is real, an ontology.
The third karika is where Samkhya lays out its entire map of reality in just a few incredibly dense words. In Sanskrit, it goes, Mula prakriter avikriter maharad ya prakriti vikritea sapta. Shorashikas tu vikaro na prakriter navikrite purusha. I know, it's a mouthful, so let's break it down piece by piece.
This unbelievably compact verse sets up the entire framework for reality. It draws these clean, clear lines between four totally distinct categories of existence. And you really want to pay close attention here, because understanding these distinctions is the absolute key to seeing how freedom from suffering is even possible in this system. This table maps it out perfectly. First, up at the top, you have Mula Prakriti, the root nature, the uncaused cause of everything we experience. From that, you get the 7. These are intermediate principles that are both effects of that root nature and causes of the next level down. Then from them come the 16, the final products like our senses, our mind, the elements. They're only effects. This whole cascade, that's the realm of nature, of Prakriti. But then, and this is everything, completely separate from all of that, you have Purusha, pure consciousness, the knower. It is not a cause, it is not an effect, it stands completely outside that whole causal machine of nature. And this right here, this is the whole game. Liberation is possible only because our true conscious self, the Purusha, isn't just another cog in that machine.
Okay, so we have a map. It's a fascinating one. But how do we know it's accurate? How can we actually trust it? I mean, to find a real cure, you need reliable tools for knowing what's true. And that brings us to Sankhya's theory of knowledge, its epistemology, which is just as rigorous as its map of reality.
The fourth karika answers this question by listing the valid ways of knowing, which are called the pramanas. In Sanskrit, it goes, Drishtam anumanam aptavachanam cha sarva pramana siddhatvat. Trividham pramanam ishtam, prameya siddhihi pramanadihi. This verse basically says that truth is established only through these valid means of evidence.
Samkhya says there are 3 and only 3 valid ways to know something. First, drishtam. That's just direct perception, what you see, hear, taste, touch, and smell. Simple enough. Second, anumanam, inference. The classic example is seeing smoke on a distant hill and inferring there must be a fire, even though you can't see the flames. And third, aptavachamayam, reliable testimony, like the words of a trustworthy expert or a proven tradition. The big takeaway here is that this is not a path of blind faith. It's grounded in a disciplined, rational system for figuring out what's real.
Okay, now we get to see these tools in action. Samkhya uses them to understand realities that we can't see, to get at those hidden, subtle causes of our suffering. So how in the world can we know something that we can't directly perceive with our senses?
The 7th karika offers what I think is a brilliant philosophy of non-perception. It gives a whole list of totally logical reasons why we might not see something that is actually there. Here it is in Sanskrit. Atidurad samipyad, indriyag ghatan, manona asthanad, sukshmyad vyavadhanad, abhibhavad samanabhiharacha. Let's take a look at this fascinating list.
This verse is just fantastic. It basically says, hey, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. And the reasons are pure common sense, right? A ship on the horizon is too distant. The salve in your own eye is too near. Your senses could be impaired, or maybe your mind is just wandering and you're not paying attention. A wall could be in the way, or the bright sun might overpower the light of the stars during the day. But the crucial reason for our journey, the one we're highlighting here, is sakshmaya, subtlety. Some things are very real, but they're just too fine, too subtle for our senses to pick up.
The 8th karika takes this exact principle of subtlety and applies it directly to that ultimate cause of the universe we talked about, Mula Prakriti. It reads, Sakshmyat, tadanupalabdir, nabhavat, karyatas tadupalabde, mahadadi tachakaryam, prakriti sarupam, virupamcha. This is really the logical climax of the argument so far, where our theory of knowledge meets our map of reality.
So let's break this down. Why can't we directly see Mula Prakriti, the root nature? Not because it doesn't exist, but because of its extreme sakshmya, its subtlety. So how do we know it's there? We use our second tool of knowledge, anumanam, inference. We know the subtle cause exists because we can directly perceive its effects, the entire manifest world from our own intellect all the way down to physical objects. The visible, tangible world we experience is the smoke that allows us to logically infer the existence of the unseen fire, its unmanifest subtle source.
And that brings us to our conclusion. When you really step back and look at these first 8 verses all together, you realize they aren't just a random collection of thoughts. They form a complete, airtight, logical journey that takes us from a universal problem to a very specific, knowledge-based solution. It's really a masterclass in philosophical reasoning.
So let's trace this whole journey one last time. It all begins with the problem, the threefold suffering that forces us to look for real answers. That leads us to establish a reliable method, the 3 valid means of knowledge, the pramanas, which keep us on the right track. Using that method, we arrive at a diagnosis. The world we experience is just the effect of a subtle, unseen cause, and our suffering comes from confusing our true self with this world. And that diagnosis points us straight to the cure, the liberating insight that clearly distinguishes our pure consciousness, purusha, from the entire machinery of nature, prakriti. In just these opening verses, the Samkhya Karika lays out its entire path in miniature.
So, I'll leave you with this to chew on. If your true self, your consciousness, is completely separate from the ever-changing world, and that includes your thoughts, your body, and your emotions, then who or what is the knower of your own experience? It's a question that gets to the very heart of this ancient path to freedom. Thanks for joining me on this journey. If you got something out of this, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts on that final question in the comments below. We'll see you in the next explainer.